massive welcome to Andrew Johnson with Secrets in the Solar System. Andrew runs all the W's checktheevidence.com, where many subjects come under scrutiny, including 9/11 and the brilliant works of his colleagues, Dr. Judy Wood. Health, encompassing cancer, vaccines and energy medicine, and chemtrails and lots more. Tonight, Andrew looks at our solar system and also another organisation that also looks at our solar system. After spending billions of somebody else's money, NASA is denying evidence contained in its own photographs regarding water, the atmosphere and possible life, past or present, on Mars, and anomalies with the huge ring system of Saturn. Why is this? Well, let's have a look. Please welcome Andrew Johnson.
Okay, Rob, thanks very much. It's nice to be back here with everyone, and I'd like to thank you all for coming, particularly those that have come a long way. And hopefully I've got some interesting things to show you tonight, which I do get a bit annoyed about, as you'll probably see as we go through this. This talk basically is like an updated version of one that I did here in 2009, I think it was, which is just over 4 years ago. So I found out a few extra bits and pieces since then. So, you know, if some of it seems familiar to some of the few people in the audience, that's why it is. There are a few slides from that talk. So I'm hoping that this will work, and I might have to fiddle with the sound maybe, but hopefully that's all queued up. So here we go. What we're going to look at tonight, we're going to look at NASA and other scientific data about Mars, Phobos, which is an unusual moon of Mars, the moon Iapetus, which is one of the moons of Saturn, and we're going to look at some pictures of the Sun from SOHO, the SOHO probe, which I'll talk about later. We've got a lot of material here, so I'm not sure to skip over some things. Obviously come and ask me questions at the interval or at the end of the talk. I'll be happy to try and answer what I can. But what I've come to ask myself is, are most scientists deliberately ignoring the most intriguing data? Is that what's really happening? Does the data indicate life and intelligence, past or present, elsewhere in the solar system? And some of this, as I say, I showed in February 2009, that's 4 years ago. But I think they are actually ignoring data. And I think by the end of this presentation, you'll probably agree with me. So we're going to start off looking at Mars and some of the stuff I said I've shown before, but there's quite a lot of new stuff that I've discovered since 2009. Quick look at Mars. Well, it's almost like a sort of little brother of the Earth. And it's actually about 1/3 the size. And I think the gravity is, again, about 1/3 of what we've got on the Earth, according to standard figures. Some people disagree that the way that gravity is measured is not to do with the mass of the planet and so on. There's various sort of arguments and stuff. People like John Lear, for example, claim that the surface gravity on the moon is about 60% of that on the Earth, not 1/6. I don't know whether that's true. So Mars does actually seem quite similar to the Earth in many respects. And what we found is that there's been over 50 probes that have gone to Mars. I think it's about 59 have been to Mars, something like that now, since the 1960s. The first attempt was made by Marsnik program, the Russian Marsnik program, and Marsnik 1 went there in 1960, but most of these probes failed. They failed to reach the target, or they blew up, or they crashed into the sea or whatever. And Mariner 4 was the first successful probe which flew by the planet, and that took place in July 1965, and that was covered by our friend Richard Hoagland. That's when he started getting involved. That goes back quite a way, and that was covered on radio. And there have been over 50 mission attempts, as I say, with a number of failed and aborted missions, both from the USA and Russia. And the most sophisticated to date is probably the current Curiosity rover, so there's been a lot of renewed interest in the news over the last sort of 18 months or so because of this Curiosity rover, which is as big as a car. It's a very sophisticated instrument. I believe they spent $1 billion on this mission, which is a lot of money, obviously. But really, the first thing that I came across that was interesting was stuff from the Viking probe. And this is where some of the controversy really starts about Mars. And Viking 1 and 2, each consisting of an orbiter and lander. The primary mission objectives were to obtain high-resolution images of the surface of Mars, characterize the structure and composition of the atmosphere and surface, and search for evidence of life. So that was indeed one of the objectives of Viking, to search for evidence of life. Viking 1 was launched on August 20th, 1975, and arrived at Mars on June the 19th, 1976. Viking 2 was launched on September the 9th, and arrived a bit later on July 1976. And the total cost of the Viking mission 2 was roughly $1 billion, and that's going back to 1976. So these are huge sums of money you've got involved here. Now, you may recall, I recall actually seeing part of Viking being discussed on Blue Peter, because the person that designed this, I can't remember if I've got a picture, yeah, this arm here, I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again because it's sort of emblazoned in my memory. The Viking lander's robot arm, which came out and dug into the soil, that was designed by a British guy at some British university, and he was on Blue Peter, and he did a talk about how he designed this arm and so on. And so I distinctly remember that. And I then remember hearing on John Craven's news round at the time that they had indeed discovered evidence for bacteria in the soil of Mars. And then about a year later, they said, no, it was a mistake. There weren't any microbes. It was actually to do with the chemistry that was used in the experiment, and the chemistry was wrong, and we didn't detect microbes after all. Again, the news doesn't tell you the truth. It doesn't give you the full story. On 28th of July 2001, Space.com reported that several scientists have found compelling evidence that the Viking Mars landers did indeed discover life on the red planet in 1976. A re-examination of findings relayed to Earth by the probe some 25 years ago claimed the experts show the telltale signs of microbes lurking within the Martian soil. This is a key part. The inventor of the labeled release experiment, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute, Gilbert Levin, said the Viking LR experiment detected living microorganisms in the soil of Mars. He added that after years and years of tests and over 24 non-biological explanations later, none of the many attempts to establish the oxidants mimicry of the LR data did so. What Gilbert Levin's experiment did was they got some dust from the Martian soil, they put it into this sort of chemical soup. The chemical soup, which had sugars in it, allowed bacteria in the soil to metabolize the sugars, which were laced with radioactive carbon-14, and they detected radiation being given off in the CO2. And that was the label release experiment. And the other life detector, we're going to hear more about this later on actually, so I won't spend much time on it here. And so basically, he was convinced his experiment worked, but then NASA employed other people to debunk their own results. That's what they did. Richard Hoagland has claimed, and he's not the only person, by the way, that when the Viking lander first came down on the surface, and again, we're going to come back to this very sort of time, they showed that this, I think maybe if we could have the lights down for some of this, because some of the colours we're going to need to see here, we've got a bit of a sort of light screen here. They showed that this was actually more of a bluish colour, but then somebody came in to mission control, tweaked the knobs on the monitors, and they gave the sky this reddish appearance. Right? So you can see here, it's not that clear on this, but we'll see it more clearly in later shots. Got a bluish sky here, and they said, oh no, that's not right, there's something wrong with that. And he reports this in his book, Mars, the Living Planet, which he wrote with Barry Di Gregorio, and you can get that on Amazon if you want to. And what we've got here is, again, this looks quite washed out on this projector, unfortunately, but this is actually a very blue sky. I've got some booklets actually as well over there in the thing, and I've got some booklets on there, I've just got my laser pointer on it, which have got this picture in it. You can see it on my website as well, so you don't have to buy the booklets. But this is very clearly a blue sky. And the guy that created this picture, what he did was, this guy called Holger Isenberg, and you can go onto his website, he took the original Viking data, and as you may recall, or as you may know, the Viking images are actually taken They have 3 black and white images. They're taken through a red filter, a green filter, and a blue filter. And then they recombine those images. It's actually a monochrome camera, and they create a colour image. Now, when you actually recombine those 3 colour images, and you use the correct filter specifications, it comes out as a blue sky. And I've seen 4 separate analyses, one of which is by Gilbert Levin and his son Ron Levin. They've come out with the same result. Mars has a blue sky, no doubt about it. Now, and you're going to see how they've got away with saying that it's a red sky. I'm going to play you a clip now, all being well. I hope the sound's rigged well.
And there's the first piece of information coming in.
Oh.
Say something, Tim.
Yeah, I'm supposed to say something at this point. I just don't feel like talking.
Well, there are rocks.
There are rocks, yes. There's rocks and there's sediment, but it's just incredible to see that the Mars, is really there. Instant interpretation is always a little bit hazardous. Nonetheless, many of these boulders do look very similar to ones that we've seen in desert terrains here. Some of these boulders may be vesicular, that is, basaltic rocks, possibly volcanic rocks that have solidified in a gas-charged environment, and the released gases produce vesicles or holes. Just looks like a perfect set down.
The first picture of the Martian panorama.
As you look at the field of view in general, I think the most striking impression is one of a lot of rocks. And this automatically brings to mind the fact that we had a good deal of luck, because some of these rocks are about 2-3 meters across, and had the spacecraft landed on those rocks, it would have been disabled, probably permanently disabled.
Later high-resolution pictures confirmed the rocks were volcanic, but lying on dunes of fine sand. On the second day, the first pictures in color. Mars was indeed the red planet, or at any rate, blue-red. But the colors were false. It was noticed that one of the cables on the spacecraft wasn't orange enough. The color was corrected, and Mars turned even redder. The reason for their mistake? The sky. Everyone had assumed it would be blue, like on Earth. But on Mars, scattered dust turns the sky pink and makes sunsets purple.
Now, you may have recognised the dulcet tones of William Franklin, the famous actor from the 1970s. That clip you saw was actually from a 1976 documentary, I think. That was from the 1976 documentary, or 1977 documentary with William Franklin. But it was repeated within a 2009 documentary. And the point that I'm making is, they said the colour of the cable was incorrect. Do you remember? In that clip it said the colour of the cable on the lander was too orange. So they corrected it. They don't calibrate the colours on the Martian surface from a cable. And we can prove that that is untrue. These are the colour calibration charts on the Viking lander. They put them on the lander so that they could calibrate the colour images. The BBC is putting out false information. They deliberately falsified the colours. These are used to calibrate the colour on Mars. But they said it was a cable. That's extremely poor research which was done. If I can work out that's false, the BBC should be able to. And they repeated that error in 2009. So they have a history of falsification of the colours of the colour of the sky on Mars. Mars has a blue sky. It has a red surface, right enough, but just because we have, the colour of the surface of the Earth doesn't dictate the colour of the sky. Over a forest, you don't have a green sky, do you? Or over a big football pitch, you don't have a green sky. The colour of the sky is dictated by the way that white light is scattered by small particles and gases that are in the atmosphere. Mars has a blue sky. Again, the blue's not coming out very well on this projector, I'm not sure why. This is blue, this is deep blue here. this should be blue. This is not red, and it's actually, this is an ESA picture from the Mars Express probe, which we'll mention a bit more about. So there's a history of the, you can clearly see that this doesn't have sky in it, but it is reflecting the colour of the sky, which is blue. And here again we've got colour problems with this image. This is where they're covering up the colours on Mars. Comparison between publicly accessible Mars Express images and those from Mars Global Surveyor. Mars Express is the European Mars probe, which is still orbiting Mars, went up in 2003. It had the ill-fated Beagle 2 lander attached to it, which crash-landed, apparently. So the one on the left has this sort of, is that algae, is it vegetation? But this is the Mars Global Surveyor image. Generally, the Mars Express images do seem to have better colour balance than the Mars Global Surveyor images, which tend to be all grey. And even with the Surveyor, the current Curiosity rover, you'll see a predominantly, if you go onto the NASA website and look at these pictures, you will see that even in this digital age of camera phones and advanced digital cameras that can do everything, you know, make the tea and everything, you're still getting black and white pictures from the Curiosity rover posted on the NASA website, primarily black and white. There's a few colour, but they're primarily black and white. Now, the question of life on Mars again. I'm going to go through a couple of instances of this. It was in July 2004, it was stated by Professor Vittorio Formisano that Mars Express, that's the European probe, instrumentation had detected ammonia, methane and even formaldehyde in the Martian atmosphere. These are so-called biomarker gases, indicating ongoing life processes. They come from living organisms. And formaldehyde is a particularly troublesome one because it has a very quick degradation time. It degrades within about 7 hours. Okay? So it means that if formaldehyde was in the atmosphere, it must be being reproduced regularly. In February 2005, Formisano said, "My observations should not be taken as a statement that there is life on Mars today, because we need to go there to drill the soil, take samples and analyse them, before possibly concluding that life is there." Oh really, Dr. Formisano? Well, isn't that what Viking and Dr. Levitin's labelled release experiment did 29 years earlier? Why had he forgotten about that? So his result corroborates Levitin's, but because they declared that as being false, it's not mentioned. And they keep reporting the discovery of life on Mars about every 4 years. They did it in 2009, they've been doing it again recently, which I'll come back to. Methane on Mars again. That was 2004. Now we've got NASA. Methane clouds could be evidence of life on Mars. And that was in 2009, 5 years later. Belfast Telegraph. Same story. Same story. So yeah, repeat of 1976. And they also keep discovering water on Mars as well. Liquid water has been discovered about 6 or 7 times, and they're claiming it as a new discovery, which we'll come to again. But then this is what you get, you see. Let's see, yeah. They've also now just reproduced, on the same day NASA posted Martian methane reveals the red planet is not a dead planet. I'm getting this mixed up with the next slide. So this was on the 15th of January 2009. It's on NASA's website. Martian methane reveals the red planet is not a dead planet. That's on NASA's website 2009. And now we've got it again. 4th of December 2012, 3 months ago or so. Wired magazine reports with a caveat. Curiosity rover detects water and organic compounds on Mars. The rover also detected its first organic compounds in the form of chlorinated methane created during the sampling analysis process within the sample analysis at Mars tool. Sounds similar to the labelled release if you ask me. However, while the chlorine is definitely from Mars, the carbon might be of more earthly origin carried to the planet by the rover. So it's a bit, to me, it's a bit like saying, yes, we've discovered there are rocks on Mars. We've just discovered there are rocks on Mars. We know there are rocks on Mars. We saw them in 1976. We've seen them in all kinds of pictures since the 60s. But then they now debunk the methane reports. On 13th of December, the Discovery News reports, where's Mars's methane? Curiosity draws a blank. So you get conflicting reports. Which is it? I know which story I believe.